The Galactic Council chamber glittered under golden light, its towering pillars carved with the symbols of power from hundreds of worlds. It was a place where the galaxy's most powerful species came to speak, to plan, and to pretend they ruled everything beneath the stars. Among them sat the human delegation, small in number, quiet, and patient. For years, they had endured insults that cut deeper than any blade. Words like savages, barbarians in suits, and evolved beasts were thrown at them from across the chamber, often followed by laughter. Humans were new to the stars compared to ancient empires that had existed for millennia. They had come seeking unity, trade, and peace, but what they received was mockery. Still, the humans never lashed out. They kept calm. They endured. Until the day came when one act went too far, and the galaxy crossed a line it would never be able to uncross. The meeting began as it always did, with arrogance. Alien leaders argued over territories, taxes, and treaties, while humans sat quietly at the far end of the chamber. The High Speaker, a scaled creature with eyes like molten gold, turned his attention toward them. "And what does the Deathworld species have to say today?" he asked, his tone dripping with contempt. Murmurs spread across the hall as laughter followed. Humanity's ambassador, a calm man in a dark uniform, stood. "We have nothing to say today," he replied simply. "Only to listen." His words were respectful, his tone steady, but it only made them laugh harder. The High Speaker smirked. "Listening suits you. It's what prey does before the hunt." The hall erupted in cruel amusement. Later that night, far from the Council's golden world, in a quiet human colony called Eden's Reach, the sky tore open. Without warning or declaration, an alien armada descended. The colony's defense systems lit up, but they were no match for the precision of the attack. Within hours, the settlement was gone. Homes reduced to ash, forests burned black, oceans boiled into steam. There was no negotiation, no reason, no mercy. The aliens who had launched the strike, members of a powerful empire seeking to teach humanity its place, broadcast one message to the galaxy: the barbarians have been corrected. They believed it would end there. They believed humanity would stay quiet, lick its wounds, and accept its fate. They could not have been more wrong. When the council reconvened 2 days later, the human seat was empty. For the first time in years, there was no envoy, no presence, no voice. A heavy silence filled the chamber as the alien rulers exchanged uneasy glances. "Perhaps they have finally learned their lesson," one delegate sneered, trying to hide his discomfort. "Perhaps they know their place now," said another. The High Speaker nodded, though something in his chest felt cold. "Good," he muttered. "Peace through strength." But peace was the last thing that was coming. In the dark void between stars, something was moving. Ships that had not existed in any known database came alive, silent giants built in secret. Their hulls were black, absorbing light, their engines whisper quiet. No symbols marked their sides. These were not the gleaming vessels that once carried diplomats and explorers. These were warships, forged not for conquest but for survival. Humanity had been patient. Too patient. And patience had finally broken. The first transmission came from deep space, a simple, chilling message that spread across the galaxy in seconds. It was sent from what was left of Eden's Reach, from a damaged beacon that should have been destroyed in the attack. It carried only one sentence: "You wanted war. You'll get it." Every empire received it. Every council member heard it. And the silence that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had known. For generations, they had laughed at Earth, called it weak, dismissed it as a world of reckless creatures who fought their own kind too often to ever stand united. But this silence felt different. It was not the silence of fear. It was the silence before a storm. The kind that swallowed light and breath and sound. Weeks passed. Human space went dark. No ships left their ports. No signals escaped their systems. The council grew restless. Some believed the humans were too broken to respond. Others feared the opposite, that they were preparing. The High Speaker called another meeting, his tone sharp, impatient. "The humans have gone silent," he said. "They hide in their shadows. We will remind them who rules this galaxy. But when he looked into the eyes of his fellow delegates, he saw doubt. The silence from Earth was not weakness. It was purpose. Far away, deep beneath the surface of the blue world they had mocked, factories roared to life. Old designs were reborn, forged in steel and fire. Fleets that had once been symbols of exploration were transformed into weapons of vengeance. Pilots trained in secret hangars, soldiers drilled in silence. Scientists whispered to one another as they built machines that broke every law of nature. Humanity had no empire to command, no ancient legacy to protect, but they had something far more dangerous, a reason. The survivors of Eden's Reach watched from the ruins of their world, their faces hardened by loss. They called us monsters, one whispered. Now they'll see what monsters really look like. The stars above them flickered with the glow of human ships moving into formation, like predators circling their prey. The galaxy had always believed humanity was dangerous because they came from a death world. But they had never truly understood what that meant. Now they would. The humans had tried peace. They had tried diplomacy. They had tried patience. But that patience had shattered. And as the first human fleet vanished into the black, carrying no flags, no songs, and no mercy, the galaxy began to realize that it had awakened something it could no longer control. Something ancient, relentless, and unforgiving. For the first time, the galaxy feared the silence coming from Earth. The silence from Earth stretched on for weeks, then months, echoing through the galaxy like the calm before a storm. No human ships appeared in trade lanes, no transmissions reached the Council's channels, and no ambassadors returned to their posts. To the rest of the galaxy, it was unsettling. To the arrogant empires that had mocked them, it was amusing. The humans are finished, one alien commander said with a grin, his sharp teeth gleaming under the dim lights of the war room. We destroyed one colony, and they crawl back into their caves. That's all they ever were, animals pretending to be civilized. Others laughed and nodded, but not all of them shared the amusement. A few, the older ones who remembered stories of human wars on their own world, said nothing. They had seen what silence like this meant before. Back on Earth, however, that silence was anything but weakness. Deep beneath the planet's surface, hidden facilities roared to life, shaking the ground as machines long dormant came alive. In vast hangars buried under mountains and oceans, engineers worked around the clock, welding steel, calibrating engines, and forging armor thicker than anything the Council's fleets had ever seen. The air was heavy with the smell of metal and smoke. Human scientists moved between workstations, their faces lit by the glow of blueprints showing warships the size of cities. Each design carried one purpose, not to conquer, but to erase any threat that would dare harm them again. Factories that once built exploration vessels now built weapons of vengeance. Shipyards hidden under Arctic ice and deep-sea vaults began launching silent shadows into orbit. The human fleets that had once flown bright and proud now carried no markings, no insignia, no color, just the cold black of space. Their engines burned quiet, their surfaces cloaked against detection. Humanity had spent centuries building for peace, for diplomacy, for trade. Now they built for war. Inside the United Terran Command bunker, the leaders of humanity stood around a massive table lit by holograms of the galaxy. Dozens of star systems glowed red, the territories of the empires that had supported the attack on Eden's Reach. A quiet hum filled the room as holograms of ships blinked into view, forming fleets across every human system. The room was silent except for the deep, calm voice of the Commander-General. They called us barbarians, he said slowly. They called us weak. But tell me, what does weakness look like now? He turned toward the officers around him, their faces pale but determined. We will not beg. We will not plead. We will prepare. And when we strike, the galaxy will remember it for 1,000 years. Every officer nodded. No one smiled. There was no joy in what they were about to do. Humanity had been pushed beyond peace, beyond reason, beyond forgiveness. What came next was not revenge. It was survival. All across Earth, the planet that the galaxy had called a death world was awakening. The skies were filled with streaks of light as shuttles carried supplies to orbital stations. In the deserts, Massive launch silos opened like the eyes of giants, revealing missiles capable of reaching targets across light years. In orbit, the skeletons of new battleships drifted in silence, their construction illuminated by the glow of welding arcs. Even the oceans joined the effort. Submarine shipyards launched vessels that disappeared beneath the waves, armed with weapons that no alien scanner could detect. And humanity wasn't alone. On the moons and colonies still loyal to Earth, billions worked in silence. Miners on Mars dug deep to extract rare metals needed for starship armor. Asteroid bases became hidden fortresses, their hollowed cores packed with weapons and fuel. Even civilians contributed. Farmers supplied food to soldiers. Scientists repurposed old technology, and every child learned what it meant to endure. Across the entire human civilization, a single shared truth was whispered again and again. Never again will anyone harm us without consequence. While humanity rebuilt in silence, the Council continued its meetings, its members debating whether to investigate Earth's disappearance. Some dismissed the idea. "They are no threat," said the High Speaker with disdain. "Their silence is proof of their fear. They will remain on that cursed planet and die in isolation." But others were uneasy. Reports had begun to surface. Strange sensor readings near human space, unusual gravitational distortions, vanishing scout ships. "Something is happening there," one delegate whispered nervously. "They are not hiding. They are preparing." The High Speaker waved him off. "Let them prepare. When they come, we will crush them again." But far beyond the Council's reach, hidden in the darkness of the void, human fleets gathered. They did not send threats or warnings. They did not boast or announce their strength. Instead, encrypted transmissions passed silently between command ships, carrying coordinates, strategies, and timelines. Every fleet captain knew the mission: wait, watch, and strike when the time came. Inside one of the massive warships, the UNS Vanguard, a lone pilot stared through the viewport at Earth below, the blue glow of the planet reflecting off her eyes. "They think we're afraid," she murmured. Her commander, standing beside her, replied in a calm, low voice, "Let them think it. Fear makes them careless. When we move, they won't see us coming." She nodded, gripping the edge of the console. Outside, dozens of similar ships drifted silently through orbit, their lights dimmed, their engines cold. As days turned to months, the human fleets grew in number. The black hulls of their ships gleamed faintly under the light of distant suns. In the shadows of moons, entire armadas waited. Above them, automated defense grids hummed to life, invisible to alien sensors. The humans had disappeared from the galactic stage, but they had not gone extinct. They had evolved. And then, one night, without any warning, the silence deepened. All signals leaving Earth vanished. All transmissions to and from human space went dark. Even the satellites that orbited the Council's own worlds detected a strange pattern. A coded pulse, repeating only once. No one could translate it. No one could trace it. But across the stars, every surviving human soldier understood what it meant. It was the signal they had been waiting for. Earth was ready. The silence broke without warning. For months, the galaxy had mocked the humans, calling them cowards hiding behind their world of storms and beasts. The Council had even voted to cut off trade routes to their systems, confident that humanity had faded into the dark, defeated and humiliated. But on one ordinary day, as fleets patrolled the void and colonies carried on with their pride, the first human strike came, and it changed the galaxy forever. It began at dawn over the world of Varnak Prime, a lush Council colony known for its shining towers and wealthy elite. The sky was calm, the citizens going about their business, when sensors detected a faint energy signature at the edge of the system. The defense officers barely paid attention. "Probably debris," one said lazily, sipping his drink. "Humans wouldn't dare come here." The next second, their monitors screamed with alarms. A single blip on the radar had become dozens, then hundreds. Ships were emerging from the void, black, silent, massive. Before the Varnak fleet could react, the human ships opened fire. There were no demands, no warnings, no speeches. Beams of energy and kinetic rounds tore through the defense grid in seconds. The first explosion swallowed an orbital station hull. The second ripped apart the colony's capital tower. Shockwaves raced through the atmosphere as pieces of molten metal fell from the sky. The humans did not wait for surrender. They did not even acknowledge distress signals. Every military installation, every command ship, every outpost that had taken part in the attack on Eden's Reach was erased within minutes. In orbit, the alien commanders screamed into their comms, trying to form defensive lines. Return fire. Engage now. But their fleets were no match. The human ships moved like shadows, vanishing and reappearing in perfect formation. Missiles flew with terrifying precision, guided by intelligence that seemed almost alive. Alien cruisers exploded before they could lock on targets, their burning wreckage lighting up the darkness like dying suns. The humans spoke only once, through a single broadcast that echoed across the system. A calm, cold voice said, "For Eden's Reach." Then the signal went dead, and the bombardment continued. Down on the surface, panic spread. Citizens fled through burning streets as the night sky filled with streaks of fire. The alien governor tried to surrender, transmitting pleas for peace, but the humans never answered. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to deliver a message written in fire, smoke, and silence. Within hours, Varnak Prime was gone, nothing left but a cratered wasteland. Word of the attack spread across the stars faster than light. At first, no one believed it. The council dismissed the reports as rebel propaganda. But then came the second strike, then the third. Human fleets hit every system that had taken part in the destruction of Eden's Reach. They appeared without warning, striking hard and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. The galaxy's most powerful empires found their fortresses turned to ash overnight. Spaceports that had mocked humanity's weakness were reduced to floating debris. Whole fleets were destroyed before their commanders even understood what was happening. The council called an emergency meeting, panic thick in the air. "They can't do this," shouted one delegate, his voice cracking. "We outnumber them 100 to 1. The High Speaker slammed his fist against the table. "Then destroy them. Find their fleets and wipe them out." But when the generals pulled up the tactical data, their expressions went pale. The human fleets weren't where they should be. They weren't moving in predictable lines. They were everywhere and nowhere, their attacks coordinated with impossible precision. A nervous voice from the back of the chamber whispered, "They've gone invisible. No signals, no transmissions, nothing. It's like they're ghosts." Another delegate murmured in fear, "Or predators." The word hung in the air like poison. While the council argued, another world burned. This time, it was the fortress planet Galtha, home to the very generals who had planned the strike on Eden's Reach. The invasion began from underground. Human dropships, cloaked in stealth, pierced the surface before the defense systems even activated. The first soldiers stepped out, moving through the smoke with slow, deliberate steps. They were silent, faceless, and efficient. Their armor was dark, their visors glowing faintly. The aliens fired desperately, but the humans moved like shadows through the chaos. One soldier approached a wounded officer, lowered his weapon, and said in a voice colder than the void, "You called us monsters." Then he turned away as the orbital strike hit, consuming the fortress in fire. By the time the smoke cleared, Galtha was silent. The human fleets were gone, vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. Every survivor told the same story. The humans did not gloat, did not taunt, did not take prisoners. They fought without anger or hate. They fought like machines driven by purpose. The council's desperation grew. Systems were falling faster than they could be defended. The High Speaker demanded answers from his admirals. "Why can't we stop them? They're just humans." The admiral hesitated before replying. "No, sir. They are Deathworlders. And we pushed them too far." The words silenced the chamber. Every delegate felt the weight of that truth. For generations, they had mocked Earth for being dangerous, for producing creatures that thrived where others would die. They had called it savage, cursed, untamable. Now, They were learning what that truly meant. Humanity had stopped pretending to be civilized. Weeks passed, and the galaxy trembled. Human fleets began targeting communication hubs, cutting the Council off from its colonies. Then they struck supply routes, crippling economies. Planets that had once flourished under alien rule now starved in darkness. Fear spread faster than war. Citizens hid indoors, whispering that Deathworlders were coming. Children grew up hearing tales of ships that appeared like ghosts, wiping out fleets without a trace. And still, humanity said nothing. They never sent threats, never demanded tribute, never answered the Council's desperate calls for peace. Their silence was worse than any roar. It told the galaxy that mercy was gone. At the edge of the Milky Way, deep in the black void, the human fleet gathered once more. On the flagship Vanguard, the Commander-General stood before the window, watching distant stars. "They thought we were done," he said softly. His voice was calm, not angry, just cold, steady, and final. They thought patience was weakness. But patience was preparation. Behind him, his officers waited for his next words. "Now," he said, turning toward them, "they will see the cost of their arrogance." As his command echoed through the bridge, thousands of human warships came alive, engines burning white, weapons locking onto distant worlds. The void trembled under their power. Humanity had begun its march, and the galaxy was about to learn that when Deathworlders stopped playing fair, no one survived. The news of the first human strikes spread faster than light, burning through the galaxy like wildfire. Every broadcast, every communication network carried the same terrifying message. The humans were back, and they were no longer playing fair. At first, the Council tried to censor the reports, claiming they were exaggerated or fabricated. But as more systems went silent and more fleets vanished without a trace, the truth became impossible to hide. The galaxy was in shock. The species that had once begged for peace was now rewriting the definition of war. On distant planets, alien citizens crowded in fear, watching shaky holovids that captured the aftermath of human attacks. Entire cities leveled with surgical precision, fleets cut apart by unseen weapons, and soldiers in black armor walking calmly through fire. No one could understand how they moved so quickly, how they fought so efficiently, or how they seemed to appear out of nowhere. Rumors spread that the humans had built weapons powered by dark energy, or that their soldiers were no longer fully organic, but something more, something evolved by the Deathworld itself. The most frightening rumor of all was that they did not kill out of rage or hate. They killed out of duty, with cold precision, as if vengeance was a job rather than an emotion. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, fear replaced arrogance. The same leaders who once mocked the human envoy now shouted over one another, desperate for answers. "They have destroyed 6 of our colonies in 2 weeks. One delegate cried, his voice breaking. "They do not even communicate. They strike and vanish." Another slammed his fist against the table. "We must unite our fleets. Every empire must contribute ships before they reach our core worlds." The High Speaker glared at them, his once proud expression now weary and pale. "Do you think they care how many ships we have?" he said bitterly. "They don't fight wars the way we do. They fight to end them." His voice echoed in the silence that followed. Meanwhile, across the stars, human fleets continued their silent campaign. They attacked only those who had participated in Eden's Reach, moving with mathematical precision. Each target fell without mercy, each strike executed with flawless timing. Entire planets were reduced to glowing craters before their defense fleets even realized what hit them. No one could predict the next target, no one could trace their approach, and no one could stop them. The galaxy's greatest tacticians studied the humans' movements and found no pattern. "They fight like predators," one analyst whispered, staring at the glowing red dots marking destroyed systems. "They don't strike where we expect. They strike where we are weakest." Even among the alien civilians who had once cheered for humanity's downfall, fear began to replace hatred. Some sent messages of apology into the void, hoping somehow the humans would hear. Others abandoned their homes, fleeing to distant worlds untouched by war. A whispered phrase began to circulate in marketplaces, on starships, and in council halls alike, Do not speak of Earth. Do not draw their attention. Back on Earth, the command bunkers were quiet, their walls lit by the soft glow of holographic maps showing enemy worlds falling one by one. The Commander General stood before the main display, his eyes reflecting the faint red light of another destroyed fleet. Around him, officers monitored transmissions and casualty reports. Resistance has dropped by 70%, one officer reported. Their fleets are scattering. They're abandoning their colonies. The commander nodded, his voice calm. They will learn the lesson we were forced to learn, that mercy can be mistaken for weakness. And we will never be weak again. In the outer colonies of the alien empires, panic turned into chaos. Soldiers deserted their posts, fleeing from battlefields before the human fleets arrived. Entire governments collapsed under fear alone. Some planets even sent their leaders into hiding, terrified that Earth's vengeance would reach them next. On one such world, a young alien officer stood watching the sky from a crumbling tower. The horizon glowed faintly red where human ships had passed days earlier. They used to come with ambassadors, he whispered to his superior. Now they come with fire. The older soldier shook his head slowly. And we deserve it. As humanity's shadow stretched across the galaxy, strange things began happening. Communication relays near human space started to fail, their signals jammed by unknown interference. Patrol ships vanished, found later drifting in silence with no crew aboard, only the words Eden's Reach carved into their hulls. Even the black markets that had once sold human artifacts shut down, terrified of being associated with the Deathworlders. The galaxy had always feared Earth's wild nature, but now it feared its silence even more. On the Council's central world, riots broke out. Civilians demanded protection, but no one knew how to provide it. Entire regions of the planet were locked down as rumors spread that human ships had been seen near the system. The Council's defenses were activated for the first time in centuries, covering the skies with orbital guns and shield grids. Yet despite all this preparation, the fear only grew worse. Every night, the same question echoed through the streets, whispered from one terrified voice to another, when will they come? The High Speaker, once the loudest voice against humanity, now avoided speaking at all. In his private chambers, he replayed the last message humanity had ever sent before their silence began. You wanted war. You'll get it. The words haunted him. Every night he dreamed of the human envoy's cold eyes staring back at him, of the quiet rage that had burned beneath the surface that day in the council. He had thought it was weakness then. Now he knew it was warning. In the void beyond the council's reach, humanity watched. From the bridge of the UNS Vanguard, the Commander General stood before the stars, his hands clasped behind his back. They're afraid, said one of his officers. The entire galaxy is hiding. The commander nodded, his gaze steady. Good. Fear keeps them quiet. And silence keeps them alive. His tone carried no anger, only weary understanding. We offered them peace, and they spat on it. Now they'll learn the cost of their pride. In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, the whispers of Deathworlders spread like a legend. Children were told to behave, or the humans would come. Soldiers spoke of black ships that appeared from nowhere, raining fire and then vanishing into the dark. The Council's armies, once united and confident, were now fractured and afraid. The galaxy had seen wars before, but never like this. Humanity had stopped fighting for victory. They were fighting for memory, to make sure no one ever forgot what happened when the Deathworlders stopped holding back. And deep inside the Council's golden chamber, the once proud rulers began to realize the truth. The humans were not just coming for revenge. They were coming to remind the galaxy why no one should ever have dared to test a world born from chaos and pain. The galaxy had laughed at Earth. Now, it could only tremble. Across the stars, the light of countless burning worlds marked the path of humanity's vengeance. Entire sectors that once glowed with trade and life now lay dark, drifting in silence. The Council's proud banners no longer flew. Their mighty fleets no longer patrolled the void. Every alien transmission carried the same haunting phrase, the Deathworlders are coming. Panic gripped the galaxy, and the fear that once seemed distant now crawled into every home, every heart, and every corner of the known universe. But Earth was not finished. The storm that had begun with vengeance was now growing into something far greater: retribution. Deep in orbit above the blue planet, a fleet unlike any the galaxy had ever seen stood ready. Massive dreadnoughts, each one the size of a city, floated in silence. Their hulls were made of black titanium, absorbing the light of nearby stars. Beneath their armor, weapons glowed faintly like veins of fire, alive and waiting. The humans no longer needed to hide. The time for silence had ended. In the command deck of the Vanguard, the Commander-General stood before the fleet's captains, his voice calm and steady. For years, they called us monsters. For years, we restrained ourselves. No more. The Deathworlders will show them what true restraint kept at bay. The officers around him nodded in grim silence. None of them smiled. None of them celebrated. War had changed them all. The order came quietly, yet its echo reached every corner of human space. Operation Retribution, commence. Thousands of engines roared to life, their thunder shaking the void. Human warships emerged from hidden bases, from asteroid belts, from dark space regions where no scanner had ever reached. The fleets aligned like a wall of black fire stretching across the stars. Each ship's identification beacon flickered to life, showing one shared message: Eden's Reach. It was no longer a colony. It was now a name that haunted the galaxy, a wound humanity would never let heal. Their first target was the core of the Valrock Empire, the same empire whose generals had ordered the destruction of Eden's Reach. The Valrock considered themselves unstoppable, their fleets unmatched, their armies vast. Their homeworld, covered in shining silver cities and endless defense grids, was known as the Fortress of the Galaxy. Billions lived there, believing their walls were unbreakable. That illusion lasted less than an hour. Human ships appeared in orbit without warning, their drives leaving trails of white fire that cut across the black. The Valrock fleet, 10,000 ships strong, scrambled into formation. Admirals shouted orders, weapons powered up, and shields glowed to life. But before they could fire a single shot, the humans struck. Waves of kinetic bombardments rained down, tearing through their shields like paper. The ground below cracked under the impact, cities vaporized in blinding light, oceans boiled into clouds of steam. The Valrock fought desperately, but it was like trying to fight a storm with bare hands. Human ships moved with impossible precision, their attacks calculated down to fractions of a second. Every time the aliens adapted, the humans shifted tactics instantly, predicting their moves as if reading their minds. Drones swarmed from human carriers, smaller than any fighter but deadlier than entire fleets. They moved like shadows, weaving through defenses, striking engines and reactors with surgical precision. In less than half a day, the Valrock Empire, the one that had once ruled over 50 star systems, was gone. When the battle ended, no human commander gave a speech. No one celebrated. The fleet simply turned away, leaving the broken planet behind in silence. For the humans, this was not about pride or conquest. It was justice, cold, unrelenting, and absolute. The destruction of the Valrock homeworld sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Panic turned into despair. Whole empires began sending pleas for peace to Earth, begging for forgiveness. Messages flooded the communication channels. We surrender. We had no part in the attack. Spare us. But Earth did not respond. Humanity had learned that words meant nothing. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was in chaos. Delegates screamed at each other, blaming one another for the escalating war. We must reach out to them, cried one, his voice desperate. We must beg for peace before they destroy us all. Another pounded the table with a trembling fist. They don't want peace. Don't you understand? They want us to suffer as they did. The High Speaker sat silently at the head of the chamber, his face pale, his golden eyes dim. We made them what they are, he whispered. We called them Deathworlders, and now they have become exactly that. Outside, the galaxy crumbled. Colonies once loyal to the Council declared independence, terrified of being seen as allies to those who wronged Earth. Refugee ships filled the space lanes, Entire species fleeing from invisible enemies they could not hope to stop. Alien fleets abandoned their posts, leaving worlds defenseless. But while the galaxy fell apart, Earth stood united. On every human world, from Mars to Titan to the distant colonies near the Orion Rim, humanity stood as one. Factories produced ships faster than ever, scientists perfected weapons no alien could comprehend, and soldiers were trained not to conquer, but to ensure no one would ever harm their kind again. In the silence of their unity, humanity found something far more powerful than vengeance. They found purpose. As the fleet returned from its latest campaign, the Commander-General gazed upon the burning remnants of the Valrock system from the bridge of the Vanguard. "They thought we were fragile," he said quietly. "They thought our compassion was weakness. But compassion has limits." His second-in-command turned to him. "And what now, sir? Do we stop?" The commander's gaze hardened. "We stop when the galaxy learns what peace truly costs." Far away, on the edge of known space, a single message appeared on every channel the Council still controlled. It came from an unknown source, yet every translation was the same. For simple words that froze every heart across the stars. "This is only the beginning." The council chambers fell silent. No one dared to speak. No one dared to breathe. The galaxy, once proud and loud, now waited in terrified stillness. Every species understood now. This was not the wrath of a broken world. This was the wrath of Earth. And for the first time in history, the galaxy finally understood what it truly meant to awaken a death world. The galaxy that had once mocked humanity now lay trembling in the ruins of its arrogance. Every empire, every fleet, and every proud ruler who had once laughed at Earth now watched the stars in fear. The wrath of the Deathworlders had burned across the stars like wildfire, leaving silence and ashes behind. Those who had not yet been struck knew their turn was coming. Entire civilizations prayed that somehow, the humans would stop, that somehow, mercy would return to them. But mercy was gone. Humanity had given it up the day Eden's Reach was destroyed. The Galactic Council chamber, once filled with noise and laughter, now stood in a heavy silence. Delegates sat in fear, their faces pale and their voices trembling as they watched the holographic reports flicker before them. Another world had fallen. Another fleet destroyed. Another empire erased from the stars. "They are unstoppable," whispered one delegate, his voice barely audible. "No one can stand against them. Every weapon we send, they destroy. Every trap we build, they avoid. It's like they can see the future." The High Speaker, who had once mocked the human envoy years ago, now sat hunched in his seat, staring at the glowing image of Earth rotating slowly above the table. "They told us this would happen," he said softly. "We did not listen." But among the council, there were still a few who believed words might save them. A plan was made, to send envoys to Earth, to plead for peace, to beg for forgiveness. If they wanted to destroy everything, they would have done it already, said the ambassador of the Wythar Dominion. There must still be reason in them. We will send ships to their borders with a white signal of peace. Perhaps they will listen. It was a desperate hope, a last prayer in a galaxy that no longer believed in mercy. And so, the council prepared a diplomatic fleet, filled with envoys, translators, and priests of peace from 100 species. The ships were painted in white and gold, carrying no weapons, only banners of surrender. They launched toward human space under the council's seal, broadcasting their peaceful intentions on every frequency. Across the galaxy, everyone held their breath. Would the Deathworlders accept their plea, or would they destroy them like the others? As the fleet approached human territory, the stars grew darker. Navigation signals failed. Scanners showed nothing but static. The envoys grew nervous as they entered the border systems, but still, no one fired. Then, after several long hours, a massive shadow appeared before them. A ship so large it eclipsed the stars. Its hull was black, its surface covered in markings that glowed faintly red. It was the UNS Vanguard, humanity's flagship. The alien envoys stared in awe and fear as the giant ship drifted silently closer. A voice came through the comms, calm, steady, and unmistakably human. You are trespassing in restricted space. The alien ambassador trembled as he replied, We come in peace. We represent the Galactic Council. We wish to end this war. Please, But before he could finish, the human voice interrupted. You wished for peace before, when it suited you. When it cost you nothing. You burned our people alive and called it correction. You left us to die and called it order. You destroyed our colony and called it justice. And now you come begging for mercy. The ambassador tried to speak, his voice shaking. We made mistakes. Horrible mistakes. But we can fix this. We can make peace again. A long silence followed. No one spoke. No sound came from the human ship. And then the voice returned, colder than before. There is no peace without memory. You want peace? You want forgiveness? Then carry this message back to your council. Earth remembers. Without another word, the Vanguard's engines ignited. The shockwave of its departure sent the envoy ships spinning through space. Their systems failed, their transmissions jammed. When they finally regained control, the humans were gone. The message was clear. There would be no talks. There would be no truce. The humans would stop only when the galaxy understood what they had done. When the envoys returned to the council, they brought with them the recording of the human commander's voice. It played through the chamber, echoing in the silence. Earth remembers. Those two words broke whatever hope remained. The ambassadors looked around, some weeping openly, others frozen in despair. They will never forgive us, one whispered. We have doomed ourselves. The council sent one final transmission toward Earth, a plea that reached every human frequency. To the people of Earth, it began, we accept all responsibility. We surrender. Please, stop this war. We will pay any cost. For several days, there was no answer. The galaxy held its breath, hoping that perhaps this time, the Deathworlders would listen. But when the response came, it was not from Earth. It came from the human fleet. The message was short, simple, and terrifying. You had your chance for peace. The council broke into chaos. Delegates screamed, some collapsing in despair, others trying to flee the chamber. The High Speaker sat in silence, his eyes empty, his voice trembling as he whispered, They warned us. They told us never to test them. We thought ourselves gods. We were wrong. Meanwhile, in the black of space, the human fleets moved once more. The ships of vengeance had no destination left. They moved with purpose, carrying out their final mission. One by one, the remaining warlords and empires who had once joined the attack on humanity were erased from existence. No speeches. No demands. Only justice. Across alien worlds, the survivors watched helplessly as human ships passed overhead, their black hulls reflecting the burning cities below. The aliens fell to their knees, begging to unseen gods, whispering that perhaps if they stayed silent, the humans would spare them. But silence offered no protection. Humanity had stopped playing fair. On the bridge of the Vanguard, the Commander-General stood watching the devastation unfold across his screens. His officers waited, uneasy. One finally spoke. Sir, the Council has surrendered. What are your orders? The commander's gaze stayed fixed on the stars. They surrendered because they're afraid, not because they've changed. His tone was calm, his expression unreadable. Fear fades. Memory does not. We will make sure they never forget. He turned to his crew. Transmit the order. Begin the final phase. All across the galaxy, human fleets received the command. Engines roared. Weapons charged. The stars themselves seemed to flicker. And then, the Deathworlders advanced once more, not for victory, but for remembrance. The galaxy had begged for peace. Humanity had offered it once and been betrayed. Now, they offered silence instead. And in that silence, every world that still stood finally understood the terrible truth. Earth was not fighting for revenge anymore. Earth was fighting to make sure no one ever dared to wake a Deathworld again. The stars burned red that night. Across the galaxy, the darkness of space was broken by the glow of fire and destruction. The last great armada of the Galactic Council stood assembled near the edge of the Orion Arm, where the void met the silver clouds of the nebula. Thousands of alien ships floated in formation, battleships, dreadnoughts, carriers, all built in desperate haste. Their hulls bore the marks of fear rather than pride. The fleet's commanders stood silent on their bridges, their voices low, their faces grim. None of them believed they would survive what was coming, but they had no choice. This was the final stand. Above the shattered remains of the old council world, the High Speaker sent his last message into the stars. To all surviving fleets, this is not about victory. This is about survival. If we do not fight now, there will be nothing left to defend. His voice trembled slightly. May the gods forgive us for what we unleashed. His words carried across the channels like a funeral bell. The ships aligned, forming a barrier of light around their worlds, ready to face the coming storm. But deep in their hearts, every commander, every soldier, every citizen watching from their homeworlds knew the truth. Nothing could stop what was coming. In the distance, sensors picked up faint distortions. The signal was unlike anything they had seen before. It wasn't a fleet. They couldn't see any ships. Just gravity ripples, space bending unnaturally. Then, the stars began to vanish. One by one, the lights flickered out, swallowed by darkness. The alien captains shouted in panic. Where are they? Find their coordinates. But before the words could even reach the comms, the first blast hit. From the black void emerged the human fleet, silent, colossal, and endless. The ships moved without sound, their engines burning a ghostly blue. At the center of it all was the UNS Vanguard, its hull reflecting no light, its guns glowing faintly like the eyes of a predator. Around it, dreadnoughts and carriers appeared in perfect synchronization, stretching as far as the scanners could read. Humanity had not come to negotiate. They had come to end the war. The alien fleets opened fire first. Thousands of plasma beams and missiles lit up the darkness, turning space into a sea of light. The explosions were so bright that entire planets could see the battle from their surfaces. The humans did not dodge. They did not retreat. Their shields absorbed the fire. Their armor withstood the storm. And then, the Deathworlders answered. The first wave of human kinetic strikes tore through the enemy lines. Massive projectiles moved faster than light, punching through ships like they were paper. Whole squadrons disappeared in a blink, leaving behind fields of molten wreckage. Human warships advanced, their formations never breaking, their silence never ending. They fought with machine-like precision, every shot planned, every maneuver perfect. It was not a battle. It was a lesson. Alien commanders screamed orders, desperate to rally their forces. Form defensive rings. Focus fire on their lead ship. But the humans were already among them. Black fighter craft swarmed from their carriers, weaving through enemy lines like shadows. Each fighter moved independently yet in perfect harmony, striking engines, reactors, and bridge cores. One alien dreadnought managed to hit a human cruiser directly, tearing off part of its hull. For a moment, hope flickered among the defenders. Then the damaged cruiser rammed itself straight into the dreadnought, detonating its core. The resulting explosion wiped out an entire sector of the battlefield. Even in death, the humans fought with purpose. On the surface of a nearby moon, alien citizens watched the battle unfold above them. The sky looked like it was on fire, streaks of red and white tearing through the stars. Some fell to their knees, praying. Others simply wept. They knew this was not just another war, it was the end of an age. Inside the Vanguard, the Commander-General stood silent, watching the display screens fill with enemy signatures blinking out one by one. His second-in-command turned toward him. "They're still sending surrender signals, sir." The commander's eyes stayed fixed on the map. "So did we once," he said quietly. "And they didn't listen." He raised his hand, giving the next order. "All fleets, advance. Leave nothing standing." What followed was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Planetary defense networks were torn apart, moons shattered, and fleets erased from existence. The aliens threw everything they had into the fight, New weapons, old technologies, even suicide tactics, but nothing slowed the human advance. The Deathworlders fought with a fury that defied reason. It wasn't blind rage. It was controlled, precise, and unstoppable. For hours, the sky burned. The soundless violence of the void consumed everything. Alien admirals begged for retreat, but there was nowhere left to run. The humans were everywhere, cutting through their lines from all sides. One by one, the Council's greatest flagships fell, their wreckage scattering like broken glass. Finally, only a few thousand alien ships remained, clustered together near the edge of the nebula. The High Speaker's voice came across the comms, cracked and weak. "This is not war," he whispered. "This is punishment." His words reached no one. His own flagship was struck moments later, splitting apart in a blinding flash. When the last alien gun went silent, the battlefield was nothing but debris. The void was filled with drifting wrecks, their lights flickering out one by one. Human ships floated among the ruins, weapons still glowing faintly, engines burning soft blue against the darkness. And then, the humans stopped firing. The battle was over. The galaxy was quiet again, but not in peace. It was the silence of defeat, the silence of fear, the silence that comes only after something unstoppable has passed through. On the bridge of the Vanguard, the Commander-General stood among his officers. The silence of the bridge was heavy, broken only by the hum of the ship's core. One young officer finally spoke. "Sir, it's done. The last fleet is gone." The commander nodded slowly, his gaze distant. "Then it's time." He turned toward the communications array. Broadcast the final message to every remaining world. Across the galaxy, screens flickered on. Every ship, every planet, every outpost still alive received the transmission. The Commander-General's face appeared, calm, cold, unflinching. "You wanted to test the Deathworld," he said. "You wanted to see what happens when you provoke the children of Earth. Now you know. Let this be the last war the galaxy ever fights." He paused, his eyes hard as stone. "We tried peace. You called it weakness. We showed restraint. You called it fear. Now, you've seen the other side of humanity. Remember it. Tell your children. Tell their children. Because if you ever forget, we will remind you." The message ended, and for the first time in history, the galaxy was united, not by alliance, not by peace, but by fear of a single world. The Deathworlders had won. But they did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They simply turned away, their ships fading back into the void. Humanity had fought without mercy, and now, they would disappear without a word, leaving behind only ashes and a warning written in fire. The final battle was over. The galaxy would never forget the day the Deathworlders showed the true meaning of their name centuries past, but the scars of that war never healed. The galaxy rebuilt itself slowly, piece by piece, but it was never the same again. The shining empires that once ruled the stars were now shadows of their former glory. The great fleets that once patrolled the void now gathered dust in museums, silent reminders of the day the Deathworlders came. No one spoke openly of Earth anymore. The name itself had become sacred, whispered only in fear or reverence. To most of the younger races, it was a myth, an ancient story told to warn those who would grow too proud. But for those who had lived through it, the memory never faded. They remembered the day the galaxy burned. They remembered the day humanity stopped holding back. On a distant world called Vika, deep within the restored Council territories, an old alien historian sat alone in his study, his scaled hands trembling as he wrote the final chapter of his life's work. His window looked out over a peaceful sky, but his mind was filled with memories of fire. He had been a junior diplomat when the humans came. He had seen their black ships eclipse the stars, heard their silence louder than any scream, and watched as his people's pride crumbled into dust. Even now, after so many years, he could still hear the human commander's final words, "We tried peace. You called it weakness. We showed restraint. You called it fear. Now, you've seen the other side of humanity. Remember it." Every word of that message had been carved into the minds of every surviving species. The old historian's stylus shook as he wrote, and so the galaxy learned the true nature of the Deathworlders. They were not conquerors, nor destroyers. They were the price of arrogance. They were the consequence of forgetting humility. He paused, staring at the words, knowing that even now, no one fully understood the humans. They had vanished after the war, retreating into the dark edges of the galaxy. No trade ships, no transmissions, no ambassadors, nothing. Some said they had returned to their homeworld to rest. Others whispered that they were still watching, waiting, ready to return if the galaxy ever made the same mistake again. On other worlds, stories of Earth became legend. Children of alien species grew up hearing tales of the Deathworlders who fought without fear, whose world itself had shaped them into survivors of storms, poisons, and endless danger. Parents used their name to warn misbehaving children, "Be careful, or the humans will hear you." Soldiers spoke of them as ghosts of war, beings who would rise from the void if provoked. Priests described them as the judgment of the stars, a force sent by the universe itself to punish arrogance. Every civilization had its own version of the tale, but all agreed on one thing: the humans were real, and they were not to be tested again. In the centuries that followed, peace returned to the galaxy, but it was a peace born not of trust or compassion, but of fear. The new Galactic Council, rebuilt in the ruins of the old, banned all wars that crossed species borders. They created memorials across the stars to remind themselves what had happened. On one quiet moon near the edge of human territory, a massive monument stood, a towering black spire reaching toward the sky. No one knew who built it, but it bore words in a language most species could not read. Scholars translated them long ago. The inscription said simply, "Here ends arrogance. Here begins remembrance." Every year, delegations from different species visited that moon. They came in silence, leaving offerings, flowers, symbols, sometimes even soil from their worlds. They called it the Day of Remembrance, though few dared to speak the name of those they were remembering. The humans never attended, but the visitors always felt like they were being watched, as if unseen eyes from the dark were still observing, judging, waiting. Back on Earth, humanity had changed too. The war that united them also haunted them. Cities rebuilt, forests regrew, and oceans healed, but the cost of peace weighed on their souls. They had not conquered the galaxy, nor sought to rule it. They had simply forced it to understand. The great warships that once brought fire and ruin were dismantled, their remains turned into monuments. The names of lost colonies, like Eden's Reach, were etched into stone, their memory kept alive in silence. Humanity had learned its own lesson, that power without restraint can destroy more than enemies. It can destroy the soul. In a quiet garden overlooking what was once the United Terran Command, an old human commander stood alone, gazing at the stars. His hair was gray, his uniform long retired, but his eyes still carried the weight of those terrible years. Behind him, young cadets trained under banners that bore a new symbol, a single white circle on a black field, the mark of unity. One of them approached, saluting respectfully. "Sir," the cadet said softly, "they say the galaxy still fears us. Is that true?" The old man smiled faintly, his voice low. "Good. Let them fear. Fear keeps them from repeating the past." He paused, looking up at the night sky. "But I don't want them to hate us. I want them to remember us." The cadet hesitated. "Remember us how, sir?" The old commander's eyes reflected the stars, as the ones who tried peace first. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying the distant hum of the city below. The war was over, but its echoes still lived in every world, every species, every whisper that passed through the stars. And somewhere out there, beyond the rim of known space, faint signals still drifted through the void, human signals, silent, encrypted, and ancient. Some said they were nothing more than echoes, relics of the past. Others believed they were a reminder. The galaxy had forgotten many things over the centuries, names, treaties, even empires. But one truth remained carved into the memory of every being who dared to look up at the stars. Never provoke a death world. Never forget Earth. And in the quiet darkness of the cosmos, where no light reached, a single human satellite drifted endlessly through the void, its beacon blinking softly in rhythm. It carried one final message, the same one sent so long ago. We tried peace. You called it weakness. The beacon flashed again. Now you know the other side of humanity. And then, the light faded into the endless dark.